Delicious sweets for the sweets are on today's menu. I'm going to show you how to put together some delicious and simple chocolate eclairs coming up right now on Cooking with Chef Bryan. Welcome everybody to Cooking with Chef Bryan. I'm going to show you how to do some really delicious eclairs today because when I was a kid growing up, eclairs were always my very favorite pastry. Whenever we'd go to the grocery store, I remember getting them and I would just savor them forever and ever because they were so delicious to me. I don't know if it's something about the dough or the chocolate on top or the filling. Either way, they all go together so easily. And they are delicious and easy to make, believe it or not. I've started off with a little bit of water in here, as well as some salt, sugar, and butter. I've brought this up to a boil. Let's turn that up again and bring it back to a boil, because now what we're going to do is we're going to create chemistry. I love chemistry when it comes to cooking because it deals with starches when you're working with pâte à choux dough. And so what happens is, once this comes back up to a boil, I'm going to add the flour into there and I'm going to mix that together. If you've ever made a gravy, what happens when you add the flour or you create the roux and then you add the milk to it and you begin to boil it and stir it, it thickens up. That's because of the starches on there. The starches are one of those things that when they become heated to the right temperature, what happens is they balloon up like balloons. And once they get to a certain point, just like a balloon, they pop. And so that is what a starch does. All those proteins go out into the liquid and they form together and create these really delicious thickening agents that creates our sauce, our gravies, pâte à choux dough, anything like that. And so that's a really simple way to kind of think about the way that starches work. Now, since flour isn't a whole or a complete starch, it has other things that are involved in there, it will actually cloud up things. If you thicken it like a gravy, it becomes cloudy. Unlike a cornstarch, which is pure starch, will thicken things clear. So it's just one of those things. They both do the same things. Flour is not quite as powerful as a cornstarch, but it will still thicken this up and create our pâte à choux dough perfectly. So this has now come up to a boil. I'm going to add this right into here. And don't worry about the measurements. You can go get the recipe on cookingwithchefbryan.com. And this is kind of one of those magical things. I think this is one of the doughs when I was growing up, one of the first ones that I ever created. And so it's kind of one of those fun memory doughs that I do remember as a child and love. And as soon as you add in that flour and begin to stir that around, what happens is it actually balls up into a ball, and those starches thicken that up and it becomes smooth and kind of elasticy is a good way to remind it. So you do want to stir that around until you get a nice ball in there. I kind of think of it as almost like Play-Doh for that. And so let me show you what that looks like. So there's the ball of dough. Very, very simple. You can see how nice and smooth and elastic it is. When I tap it like that, it kind of jiggles a little bit like Jell-O. That's exactly what we want it to do. Those starches have activated, it's thickened it up, and this is half of the process of making a pâte à choux dough. You can do this by hand, but I love the mixer for this. So I'm going to add this into my mixer. I have the paddle attachment, and we're going to add eggs into it. So eggs are those wonderful natural leaveners. They're going to cause this to actually lift when it goes into the oven, because what happens is those gluten structures in there are going to trap the air that we're beating into it right now. The eggs, when they heat up, they're going to expand also because of the water that's in them, and that gluten structure is going to trap all that air. And what happens when air heats up? It expands, and so we get that lift in the oven, or you have these beautiful eclairs. You can also do cream puffs out of this. You can also make savory dishes out of this. There's a lot of options you can do with pâte à choux, and it is one of my very favorite doughs. I think it's really delicious. So what I've done now is a couple of eggs I've added into there. I'm just waiting for that to mix into there until it gets into there. And what you're going to do is add, as best you can, one egg at a time. Now, it's important to remember that when recipes call for eggs, it's generally large eggs. So if you have small or medium eggs at your house, or for perhaps extra large eggs, you need to really know what the consistency of the dough needs to be so that you don't under add eggs or over add eggs to it. And what that dough is, it's going to be a smooth dough that when you pipe it out, it'll hold its shape, but yet it's still liquid enough that it's easy to pipe out. And so that's kind of how you do it. This amount that we've made here takes just about 5 eggs into there. So we're going to add that last 4 eggs into there, and then we're going to let this get mixed into there and make sure that this is enough egg or if we need to add one more. And I'll show you here when we pipe this out. But don't be confused. As it's mixing, it's going to look really liquidy. You need to let it mix and be sure that it incorporates all those eggs into there so you don't get kind of this false impression of what that dough looks like. So I'll keep this mixing here. It looks like those 4 eggs are going to work. The reason why I'm doing 4 eggs, these are actually extra large eggs, and I think this is going to be just enough. I'll let that finish combining in with that dough. When we come back, we'll pipe those out and get them into the oven to cook up so that we have some delicious eclair shells to fill up in just a little bit. Don't go away.
As summer comes into full swing, it's time to fire up the grill and treat your family to a special outdoor meal featuring everyone's favorite Klondike brand potatoes. Enjoy preparing one of our many chef-inspired recipes from the web, or create your own backyard culinary masterpiece using varieties from the full line of Klondike potatoes. Visit KlondikeBrands.com today for hundreds of recipe ideas and make your summers sizzle with Klondike Brands.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm working on some delicious eclairs. My childhood favorite. Hopefully it's all of your childhood favorites or your favorites now if you're an adult. Either way, you can just enjoy them and just eat them and enjoy them and then eat them and enjoy them. I could just do that on and on all day. If I had a whole box of eclairs, I got to be very careful about that because I could probably eat all of them. Earlier I showed you how to make the pâte à choux dough where you bring to boil some water, a little bit of sugar, some salt, butter. You add the flour into it, you stir it all together, and then you add it into your mixer, add in the eggs. It's going to take anywhere, depending on the size of your eggs, from 4 to 6 eggs for the batch of pâte à choux dough that I've made here. So once that is done, I've actually transferred it into a piping bag here. And what I'm gonna do is just cut off the tip here. And we're gonna pipe these right out onto a parchment lined baking sheet. So very, very simple. Let's get that down there so we don't mess that up there. And just kind of pipe that out, squeeze, and then just do elongated pipes here. There are some people who at the very end will flick that up like that. I don't really prefer that. The reason for it is it's going to have an overall shape in the finished eclairs. So what I like to do is just kind of smash it down so that it's flat there. If you do have those little misshapen tips or anything like that when you're piping it out, don't panic, because what you can do is just wet your fingers and smooth that out. And I'll show you here in just a second how to do that. And now we'll just keep piping a little bit more so they're all the same length. And that's important, that when you're baking things, you want things pretty much about the same size so that they all bake evenly. And so that's I think one of the biggest mistakes that folks make when it comes to baking is that they have things that maybe aren't the same size and they cook at different times. And so even though the oven is the same temperature, the size makes all the difference because you want them to all cook evenly. So we'll finish adding that into there. And then for the last one I wanted to show you, you can also make cream puffs out of pâte à choux dough, because that's what it is used. And instead of making elongated like this, what you would do is just make a round pipe of a dough, just like that. And let's do one more here, just to finish up the rest of that dough. We'll do it over here where there's a little more room, and squeeze that out so that we have a nice round cream puff shape onto there. And so very simple to do, as you can see, to pipe those out. You can use, I just got my fingers wet, and I'm just going to tap those down so they don't have the peaks on there, and we'll tap that one down so they don't have the peak on there. And this is going to go into the oven. Now this is important. You need to have your oven preheated to put these in. I always preheat these up to about 400 degrees, so 350, 400 degrees, but make sure it's been preheated for about 15 minutes beforehand. And these are going to go in now. I think these are fun as a kid because what you do is the kids can sit by the oven and actually watch them puff up. I think it's kind of fun when you see that, the chemistry of the air being trapped and then hot air expanding, causing our lift into there. And the one thing about when you get those into the oven to bake, you've got to make sure that they're brown all the way around. Even the little cracks that you see are nice and brown. If they're undercooked, what happens is when you take them out of the oven, cool air, or air will cool, it collapses down, and if there's not that structure in the eclair or the pâte à choux dough after it's baked, they'll collapse in on themselves. And so if you're having that problem, just you need to bake them a little bit longer so that they have that rigid structure to hold their shape when that air begins to cool. Now, second of all, you know, when you go to a fancy pastry shop, they'll make the pastry cream to go into it. I am all about simple in my older age, I should say. I've made more pastry cream, I think, than anybody, but I have shown you how to make pastry creams before. Today, I'm actually going to use an instant vanilla pudding flavoring. And I think instant puddings have really come a long way. And I just picked these up over at Smith's. They're very simple, very easy to do. I'm going to use my mixer once again. You can do this in a bowl with a whisk. It's easy to do. I think it's a fun chemistry too to see how is this thickening, what's causing it to thicken. And so, you know, you can talk about that. It's a modified cornstarch that's into there. I just simply follow the package directions and I'm going to add that into there. Sorry for that squeakiness. This mixer here has been with me for 30 plus years, you know, and it just keeps on going, and I just think it's one of the best mixers in the world. And what I'm going to do is just make sure we've got all of that from the bottom up and into that to mix it together. And now we'll just mix this together for a couple of minutes is what the directions say. And so, you know, it's very simple to do. The one thing about this is when it gets finished mixing in the 2 minutes, it's not going to be totally thick. You need to let it sit for just a few minutes, and it thickens up as it sits also. So once this is done, this is going to be our filling that's going to go in our eclairs. We come back, I'm going to show you how to put together ganache. Oh, I think that's food of the gods. I could seriously just take a spoon and just eat ganache, chocolate and cream. Who doesn't love that mixture, guys? When we come back, I'll show you how easy it is to make ganache to top our eclairs.
It's no secret, frozen rolls are fresher than bakery rolls. You see, bakery rolls are made in commercial bakeries. Then they sit all day in stores. Some even contain preservatives because rolls begin to stale immediately. By the time you eat your roll, it could already be days old. Rhodes Bake and Serve is found in your grocer's freezer. Simply take Rhodes frozen roll dough home and let it thaw and rise in a pan. Bake Rhodes rolls in your own oven. Rhodes Bake and Serve, hot and fresh, right out of your oven.
Welcome back, everybody, to Cooking with Chef Bryan. I'm showing you how to put together some very delicious eclairs, perfect for that sweetheart in your life, easy to make, and very impressive. So earlier I was talking about the ganache, how easy ganache is to put together. What you do is you bring heavy cream to a boil, you add it into a bowl with your chocolate, and you let the heat from the cream itself melt the chocolate, stir it all together, and you're left with this beautiful fudgy thick chocolate that's just I'm not kidding you, this is actually one of my favorites. I love this ganache for frosting for cakes, because what you can do actually is let it chill and then you whip it in your mixer, and then you use that as your icing for your cakes. It's just so delicious and easy to make. So this is the vanilla pudding, the instant pudding. You could do banana pudding also if you wanted to. It's sat for quite some time, so it has thickened up just like it should, and it is ready to go. So let's go ahead. We're just gonna cut a thin tip right off the top of it to use for the filler. Now I'm going to do this assuming that you don't have any tips for eclairs, for making eclairs, because the tip for making eclairs is a specialized one. This is the tip. Looks like a big old syringe is what it looks like. And so what you would do is you would put the tip into the bag, and then you'd use the syringe portion to puncture through the eclair shell and fill the eclair up. But I'm going to show you how to do it without the tip. And what you're going to want to do is just to get just a little paring knife like this. You're going to take the eclair and you're going to just stick that in there and turn that to open up a nice hole that you can fit that bag into. And I am doing it right on the top because that's important for when we go to seal up the eclair with the chocolate. So when you do this, go ahead and we'll get our bag here ready to go, and be careful because if you squeeze too hard, that's going to start coming out of there, and you don't want that to happen. And you're going to take that tip and push it right into that hole that you just made with that paring knife, and you're going to give that a squeeze to put some of that delicious pudding in there. Now you can, if you want this to be more like a bakery itself, what you would do is before you would do this, you would actually fold whipped cream into it to lighten it up. And so that's how they do it in bakeries, is they'll make the pastry cream, which can be quite thick actually when it cools. Then they'll fold in, mix in some whipped cream to it. But these are perfectly great. Let's take another one here. And the important part is, I was talking about this earlier, is don't undercook the eclair shells, because if you do, when they begin to cool, what happens is they collapse in on themselves. So you want to make sure that all of these little creases that it actually creates, and you can see these creases here, when it creates those, you want those to be nice and brown, because when that cools, you've got to have that structure put together so that it will hold its shape. Otherwise, it'll just collapse in on itself. And when it does that, which it has done that on me many times through my life, I'll just cut the top off of it and fill it like I do a cream puff. And let's just fill up this last one here just to show. And you can feel, it's kind of fun when you fill those, you can start to feel the weight in them. Now as far as the cream puffs are very easy to put together. You can see how fun those little shells came out. What I do is actually just kind of either cut that top or just open the top just like this. And then I'm going to pipe into it some of the pastry cream, creating our cream puff. And so we'll just pipe into that some of that pastry cream or that pudding mixture there. And then voila, it is done and ready to go. And so now what you can do is you can take this, you can dip it directly. Let me just grab a butter knife here. You can take it, dip it directly into there if you want to. I'm just afraid the top will fall of this one here if I dip it directly. So I'm just going to take some of that ganache and just kind of spread it on top of our cream puff, so that it has a nice chocolate. Now ganache, if you're not familiar with it, is that yummy, yummy, fudgy chocolate mixture. When it begins to cool, it thickens up into kind of this delicious fudge that's so amazingly good. Now as far as this, you want to wipe off that excess of any of those in there, because then we're going to take this, and this is why I filled them on the top, and we're going to dip it in the ganache. And what that's going to do is seal those holes together, and voila. Oh, seriously, I love these. When we come back, guys, we'll finish all of this up. It's the perfect sweets for those sweethearts. Don't go away.
As summer comes into full swing, it's time to fire up the grill and treat your family to a special outdoor meal featuring everyone's favorite Klondike brand potatoes. Enjoy preparing one of our many chef-inspired recipes from the web, or create your own backyard culinary masterpiece using varieties from the full line of Klondike potatoes. Visit KlondikeBrands.com today for hundreds of recipe ideas and make your summers sizzle with Klondike Brands.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's finish up these delicious eclairs. I finished them all up, got them filled, so they're ready to go here. I think I'm going to use my fingers because I don't want to mess up that beautiful chocolate glaze on top. Voila! We have a delicious eclair there. I wanted to also show you, this is the cream puff. And I don't know if I really showed you beforehand. When you open them up, they're hollow, and so that's where you fill them up with whatever filling you want to. These are actually delicious too, with like a chicken salad or tuna fish salad, something like that inside of them. They make delicious little sandwich rolls also. And so when you get these all ready to go, let me just cut one open so you can see how yummy they are. And cream filled and delicious. Some of them, oozing out everywhere. Look at that. I mean, just look how delicious that filling in there is. I seriously, yeah, I'm gonna lick my fingers because I'm gonna eat this one and then I'll get my hands washed for all of you out there. These chocolate eclairs are so simple to make for your sweetheart. You can head over to cookingwithchefbryan.com, grab the recipes as well as thousands of other recipes on there. Any type of filling you want to put in there. I have chocolate all over my hands. I can't wait to dig in and eat this. I'm not going to do it on air because I guarantee it's going to be messy. And who wants to have messy all over their face when they're talking a yummy eclairs? One of my childhood favorites. I hope you all enjoy them as well. Make them for your sweetheart. They're going to be amazing. I can't wait for you to try them. Delicious chocolate eclairs with the chocolate ganache on top. Head on over to cookingwithchefbryan.com, grab the recipe, and enjoy. You can find all of these complete recipes on my website, cookingwithchefbryan.com.